So we're back with this 66 Bassman, the one that was so rusted out that I was told I would need to throw the chassis away, get a reproduction, or do all kinds of crazy stuff. Instead, it cleaned up just fine, thank you very much. If you want to see the original condition, and if you want to see what I did to get it clean, see parts 1 and 2, links in the description below. But for those of you who just want a reminder of what it looked like when it came in, here you go. So yeah, wasn't very good at all, was it? But it cleaned up pretty, so I'll show you a little bit more of this before we get started and what happened after this. And as you can see, everything came out. Everything. You can see that in detail in the second video. So it all cleaned up fine, and I rebuilt it, I think, very well. I used as many of the original components as possible. The transformers were good, the pots were good, many of the original capacitors were good, even some of the original resistors were fine, and the board cleaned up beautifully. So with any amp that I rebuild, I want to start with a very solid foundation. That means the filter caps. So here you got new MODs. Yeah, I know originally the last cap there, the first one closest to you would have been an 8 microfarad. That's because that's what physically fit that Fender could use. 20 is better. You can see I've got some silicone beneath the caps to hold everything in place, so all the stress is not just borne by the leads. All the leads go under the board, all new components, everything cleaned up just fine. While we're outside the amp, here are the new tube sockets with new bear traps and new output tubes. Got the TAD red bases. The new preamp tubes will be here soon. Here you can see the old ground lugs that were just held in place by the transformer mounting hardware. Those invariably work loose and give you bad grounds. So you can also see that I've soldered the grounds directly to the chassis like you'd find in the pre-CBS amps. I think the transition was in 65. Here you can see I've redone the output tube socket wiring. All the wiring really, all the heater wiring was removed and put back in place. Has a new grounded power cable, properly wired so that the hot is fused, then switched, and the neutral goes directly to the other primary. Here you can see the bias board. Everything new, everything clean. You can see that ground going to the chassis there. You can see the two 100 ohm half-watt resistors not going to chassis because if they do fail, it's a pain in the butt for a tech to get out the chassis iron. Just go to that ground right there. It's the same ground. Much easier to do with a standard iron. And that little bit of green heat shrink. The unused filament center tap is taped off beneath there in the heat shrink, so it can't touch anything. It should not. I've talked in the past about why an artificial center tap is better than a physical center tap. In addition to giving better hum rejection, typically, if something were to go wrong with a tube, especially new production tubes, it's much better to change out 30 cents worth of resistors than to have a dead power transformer. Here you can see more of the output socket wiring and the switch wiring and all that fun stuff. I was able to save all the original jacks and switches, though they needed deep, deep cleaning, and you get a sneak preview of stuff inside. Ooh, pretty. Some more of the inside stuff. Most of it original, not all of it, but enough. The stuff which has been changed is often in the spirit of the original. And an overview of everything. Looks pretty good to these old eyes. You can see right here that I did use the AA864 output section versus the AB165 because it's nice to have an amp that does not go sssss. As the bass channel had already been butchered, I rebuilt it custom for this particular owner, knowing the amps he's owned in the past and really liked and how he plays. I could have put this back to the original circuit, but he doesn't play bass, and this gives him something that's very useful, and no permanent modifications were made to the amp. If this amp had not already had all the parts robbed out in the bass channel, I would have kept them stock. Even in stock form, the bass channel sounds great for guitar, and it's pretty good for bass. This one, however, is going to be more high-gain, mid-range focused goodness. Another view of the inside. I think it's okay for me to say I'm proud of my work. I'm proud of my work here. Now, here's a fun bit. The 60-plus-year-old original knobs were all cracked beyond repair, at least beyond my ability to repair them. The plastic had just outgassed to the point where it would not go back together. Things were too small, too large, etc., etc. And there are no real good reproductions available on the market today, sadly. But I didn't want to just put shiny new knobs on the entire amp because they'd stand out like a very shiny, sore thumb. Notice that the current production knobs, these are Fender knobs, don't really match the old ones. The new ones have embossed print. The originals had flat print, just on the surface, and the font, the typeface is very different. It's most easily seen on the 8. The old knobs have what we call Snowman 8s, and the new knobs do not. But I took a set of new knobs and did various nasty, nasty things to them and kind of gave them the patina of old knobs. I'm not trying to fool any collectors. I'm not trying to fool anyone that these are actually original. I just don't want it to stand out from across the room that these have been changed out. This is just a little nice thing. Makes things kind of match, even if it's not historically correct. Now, if you've ever played an AB165 Bassman, it is a very loud amp, especially when you turn up to get all the gain that it's capable of getting. The owner of this amp is a professional, and he plays on large stages, but the reality of today's stages is that he has to have control over his volume. So we are adding a master volume to this amp. I tried one here called a cross line, trying to make as few changes to the amp as possible, hoping it would suffice. To my ears, it does not. I'll talk about that more in another video when I get the new tubes in and it's all buttoned up. I'll have a different master volume in here, and I will show you that and let you hear it, and I'll tell you why I chose a different take on the master volume than the cross line, which is what you'd find in many matchlesses and train wrecks. So it can be a good choice, but not for this one. When the new preamp tubes and the parts for the new master volume arrive, we'll put all this together and do a final real playing video. But you have already been hearing this amp throughout this video. All the background music was recorded into this amp, into each channel. And throughout the video, it crossfades between the two channels. You can hear the different voices, though only the cleaner stuff. You'll hear the rest of the range later. I'm just beyond pleased with how this came out, and I think the owner will be too. And I think when everyone gets to hear it, some eyebrows will be raised and some ears will be injured.